Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome back to Steelers Almighty, fastest growing Steelers podcast on YouTube. I appreciate everybody being in here, man. We have got a really good show for you guys today. First things first is who is to blame for the Steelers quarterback issues? Who is that? Is it Mike Tomlin? Is it the upper management, ownership, Big Ben? We'll discuss all that. It's time for Keeanu Benton to stand up. It's time. Now, we all know some of the issues with Keeanu Benton and where he's playing, but it's time for him to make a difference this year. We'll talk a little bit about that. Can Calvin Austin, the third, be that guy? You know, he's kind of the forgotten guy out there. Everybody talking about wide receiver two, wide receiver two. Can he be that person? We'll discuss that a little bit. And then Omar Khan. We're going to dig into the Omar Khan regime today and talk about, has he done a good job? Do we still trust him? You know, and what's going on as far as the general manager is concerned of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I appreciate everybody being in here. Again, you guys can find us weekly, youtube.com/Steelers Almighty. Anywhere that you have social media, you can find Steelers Almighty there. And if you prefer the audio version of this podcast, make sure anywhere you get podcasts, make sure you check out Steelers Almighty. So remember to like, follow, subscribe if you haven't already. Continue to dive in those comments and always hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. Without further ado, let's get into this, people. So, just as a warning, I'm still fighting that dreaded soul. So, if I have to take a lot of drinks and clear the throat a little bit, I apologize. It just is what it is, people. Let's get this thing moving. So, who is to blame for the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation? You know, when Ben retired, there was no plan. You know, there just flat out was no plan. There was no backup. It was just, okay, what are we going to do? You know, so even before that, you know, and we'll discuss that a little bit, before he retired, there was no plan. It's almost like the Steelers thought Ben was going to play forever and allowed him to play forever. So let's dive in to see who's at fault. First up, is it the front office? And when I mean the front office, general manager, head coach, you know, is it their fault? You know, because the one thing that we know is Mike Tomlin has not been able to develop, let's just say, a backup quarterback. Because look, Ben came into the league. He got him, Mike Tomlin got him in his third year. People say that Tomlin didn't develop him, he was already developed. That's not true. That isn't true. Now, if you want to give the credit for his development to other people, fine. You know, the Bruce Arians of the world, the Todd Haley's of the world. If you want to say that they are responsible, okay, I'll give you that, because that's a lot of truth to that. But Mike Tomlin was still the head coach the majority of Ben's years, and Ben was not a fully finished product when Mike Tomlin became the head coach. If you can't be honest about that, you should stay out of that conversation, because that's simply just not true. He wasn't a finished product, and I think we all know that. Okay. But we also know that Mike Tomlin hadn't been able to develop a backup quarterback worth a damn either. And let's just go over the names. First off, Omar Jacobs. Who the hell is Omar Jacobs? That would be the first thing. It's like, he got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, but who the hell is that? Landry Jones. I think we remember Landry Jones. Got drafted again by the Steelers, but didn't amount to much. Started a few games when Ben got hurt. Yeah, it did not work out. Did not work out. Joshua Dobbs. Now, Dobbs is still kicking around the NFL. And Dobbs, to me, is still a good backup quarterback if given an opportunity. Like I said, he's still kicking it around in the NFL, but he got better, it seemed, once he left the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's that. Now you have your man Mason Rudolph. Is Mason Rudolph developed? Is he even going to get a shot to ever be a starting quarterback? That's number one. I know we say, well, it's a Pittsburgh and we didn't develop him. Well, he had his opportunity in Tennessee and couldn't beat out Will Levis, which maybe he wasn't given a real shot there. But when Levis got hurt, Mason Rudolph went in, wasn't great, but we'll see what happens because I think Mason Rudolph is serviceable. He's a serviceable quarterback, maybe a step below Joshua Dobbs, maybe a step above Joshua Dobbs, depending on the situation. Then you got Chris Oladokun, got drafted the same year in 2022. I mean, seventh round pick. What were we doing? I mean, and again, just no development. 95% of Pittsburgh Steelers fans don't even know who the hell that is. And then lo and behold, Babyhands Pickett. And a lot of people talk about Kenny Pickett. Well, the Steelers did him wrong. You know, you heard Terry Bradshaw. The Steelers failed him. Okay, well, did the Eagles fail him too? I mean, he was with the Eagles. Why wouldn't he be the backup there? You know? And don't say, well, they had an opportunity. Hey, he was the backup quarterback. And when he got his opportunity, when Jalen Hurts got hurt last year, Baby Hands played like Baby Hands does. First of all, it was mediocre play with an outstanding roster, and then he got hurt, which is exactly what he did in Pittsburgh. He stayed hurt. So, you know, Mike Tomlin hasn't been able, and his staff haven't been able to develop either a starter or a backup. Other than, I'm going to give him credit for Ben. I'm going to do that. People are going to get in the comments and argue all day long. Again, Ben Roethlisberger was not a finished product when Mike Tomlin became the head coach. He wasn't. He just wasn't. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter how much you despise Mike Tomlin, he was not a finished product. And you can't just say it was only the assistants. You can't do that, people. We can't do that. Having said that, who else has Mike Tomlin developed? I would say nobody. And he's had a long time to be able to do that. So that's on him. But the mess that we're in as far as the quarterback, I mean, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, the front office, Kevin Colbert. I know he gets left off because, you know, he is not there anymore. He retired. But Kevin Colbert has a whole lot to do with it. So the front office has their problems. Now you move on. Is it Art Rooney? Now, to me, I think Art Rooney II is too involved in football operations. Now, I know he stays behind the scenes a little bit, but I don't think he's a real football guy. I think he was born into it, but I don't think that he's a real football guy. And I think he is more involved than what he or the Steelers actually let on. I believe that he's in there. I believe he's making certain decisions. I believe he's a part of all of this. And I just don't think he's a football guy. And that's part of it, is that he is too involved in what goes on. And I mean, my thing is he didn't make the decision on Big Ben. We're going to get to Big Ben here in a minute, but he didn't make the decision, or he let the decision fester and just keep going and going and going. If you remember, his father had to make a choice, and it was a tough choice. Everybody remembers Troy Polamalu. Troy didn't want to retire. Troy wanted to keep playing. He wanted to play another year. But Dan Rooney said to him, look, you can either retire a Steeler or we're going to cut you. This ride is over. And Troy contemplated him going somewhere else, and then he retired. It's tough decisions, man. I get it. But it's also a tough business. And it is a business, you know? And you can't allow maybe personal feelings or whatever get in the way in what's doing right for the franchise. And Ben played too long. They allowed him to be there too long. And that was part of it. Art Rooney should have stepped in and said no. And now we're going to move on to Big Ben, because that leads us right into this. Is it Big Ben's fault? You know, Big Ben. Now, this is the one that I push back the most on, because all Big Ben was saying was, I want to keep playing football. I'm going to keep playing until I literally, you tell me no more, or I feel like I can't. And Ben stayed. Now, people say, well, he should have quit. Now, how are you going to tell somebody what they should and shouldn't do? That's number one. Number two, somebody was still willing to pay him a lot of money to continue to play football. Now, whether I can do it or not is a different situation. But if somebody's going to pay me millions of dollars to do something, why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I give it myself a chance? You know? And that's what he did. Now, were the last few years very good? No. Should he probably have quit? It's hard to say whether he should have quit or not. But the last few years weren't great. He hurt his arm and hurt his elbow. That was a huge setback. That's late in his career. He never got the velocity back, you know. But I don't think that any of this is Ben's fault. Some people want to blame him. Has no blame. And the reason that I say that is because, again, if I play a sport and I want to continue playing and somebody's going to continue to pay me, then why wouldn't I continue to do it if that's what I wanted to do? Because there'll become a time where I don't want to do it anymore. And there was a time, but the Steelers let Ben play it out. They should have moved on, and they didn't. They did it to Troy. They should have done the same thing to Ben and said, okay, what was that, the 2020 season, the COVID season? We lost in the playoffs. Damn it, Ben, we love you, but we got to move on. They did not do that. And because they didn't do that, the team suffered. The team suffered. And they just basically hung on too long. He hung on too long. The Steelers let him hang on too long. But that's the conundrum. That's where we're at. But I don't blame Ben. I think people out there that blame that, for instance, if you had a job, whatever job that you have, and whether you're good at it or not, at the end of it, down near towards the end of your career, if they're still willing to pay you to do it and you still want to do it, wouldn't you go ahead and let them continue to pay you? Yes, you would. Now, if you didn't want to do it, that's a different conversation for a different day. That's a different situation. But if you still wanted to work at your job and wanted to prove that you could do it and your company was willing to pay you, you would absolutely go to it. That's what Ben did. It's not his fault, people. Got to let that one go. My man Big G always wants to blame Ben in this. He's wrong. You can't blame Big Ben. All he was doing was playing football, and the Steelers allowed him to play football, and they paid him to do it. If they didn't want him to play, they could have just said, no, you're done. They didn't do that. Let's move on to the poll question, people. This will be interesting. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Who do you believe is primarily responsible for the Steelers' current quarterback dilemma? Is it A, Mike Tomlin, B, Omar Khan? I'm not sure how he could be part of it, but he is. C, Kevin Colbert, D, Ben Roethlisberger, or E, Art Rooney? I like it. I like those questions, people. Make sure when you answer A, B, C, or D, put a number, the number 1 in front of it so we know exactly what poll question that you guys are answering. Let's move on. So, Keeanu Benton. I think the time is now for Keeanu Benton. First off, I want to acknowledge, because I say it all the time, Keeanu Benton playing nose tackle out of position. We all know that. Steeler fans that pay attention, they know Keeanu Benton is out of position. He is not a nose tackle. He's not big enough. That's just not his thing, playing a nose. But that's where they have him. And word is they are going to keep him there. I don't know, man. Now, we're going to need some other guys to step up, but I don't know that keeping him at nose is the answer, is the best thing for Keeanu Benton. But that's where he's been playing. But this is a big year for him, a big year. And the reason that I say that is because he's got to become a game wrecker. Cam Hayward is getting older. I know he was outstanding last year at 35. Is he going to be outstanding again this year at 36? Who knows? I'm not betting against him. I bet against him last year. I'm not betting against Cam this year. Not doing it. But Keeanu Benton's got to start playing. He's got to start being a game wrecker. And, some of the stuff that he said coming into 2024 opened my eyes. I'm like, okay, he gets it. Got to finish plays. Well, in the season, 2024 season, he didn't actually do that. Now he wasn't out there all the time, and I understand that, but he has to be more of a game wrecker. Has to be more. Now, again, it makes it difficult when he's playing out of position. When he's playing, nose tackle and he's not a nose, it makes it difficult. But there were a lot of times, even when the Steelers were in their base 3-4 defense, he's out there, he's getting scoop blocked by the center by himself. That can't happen. That cannot happen. You know, any inside or outside zone plays, you have to command a double team. And if somebody comes off the double team, you're there eating somebody's lunch. But that's the whole issue with Keeanu Benton. Just didn't finish enough plays, playing out of position. I feel for him because, like I said, coming into the season, he wanted to do some things. He didn't get them done. This has to be a year where he has to get it done. You know, this is a big, big year for him because, again, this is his third year. You know, they could always extend him next year, but they would like to see what he has, you know, because if he doesn't have anything, I think the Steelers are going to go D-line next year in the draft. And I'm not saying the first round, but they're going to go D-line in the draft next year anyway. And they may be looking for his replacement if he can't get this done. I think he can, but he's got to start doing it. Like I said, he's got to be a game wrecker. He has to be a game wrecker. And the Steelers also have to help him. The Steelers got to give him opportunities at D tackle, at a 3 technique, 4-eye, 5. They've got to give him some of those opportunities. But just to put him at nose, and I'm not saying he's horrible because he's not horrible. I don't want you to think that I'm telling you that he's horrible because he isn't. But he's not a nose guard. So while he'll fight and he'll battle, there's sometimes he gets double teamed. He just gets driven out of there. He's not big enough, you know, and that's not his natural position. So while I like Keeanu Benton and I want him to be more of a force, the Steelers also have to help and put him in a position to be a force. It can't just be, well, play out of position and do your thing. Well, hell, guys, I'm not as good. Put me over here. I'll be better, you know? And it's just one of those things. Again, we've seen it over the last few years. Pittsburgh Steelers just playing guys out of position. And I have no idea why. But here we are. I think hopefully, the addition of YA Black will help Benton get off the nose. In the defensive line's rotation, maybe YA Black is in there at nose, and we can see Keeanu if they're in 3-4, which isn't very often, or even if they're in nickel, maybe he gets a rotation at being the 3 technique, you know, out there. I want to see him be able to do more, and I think YA Black being on the team, he's a project. Don't get me wrong. YA Black's, he's going to need some work. I know a lot of people think, oh, we drafted him, he's going to fit right in at the nose. No, he's going to be a little bit of a project. But hopefully he can come along quick and Keeanu Benton can find his groove. Or, lo and behold, maybe he's like, you know what? I need to put on 10 pounds and I'm just a game wrecker from the nose tackle position. Maybe he wants to just settle in there and do that. Either way, this has to be the year where he takes a big, big step forward. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Keeanu does this year. And the Steelers need him. They absolutely need him. They went young. They got rid of some older guys, less athletic guys on the D-line. They went young. Keeanu Benton's only 23, people. And it's not like he's 30. He's 23 years old. And so he's still part of a Pittsburgh Steeler D-line, a young D-line. I'd love to see him explode this season. So let's go to the poll question. Okay, poll number 2. Which of the D tackles do you think will end up with the most snaps in 2025? Is it A, Keeanu Benton, D, Derek Harmon, or C, Y.A. Black? So which of the D tackles? And we probably should have put young D tackles because we know Cam Hayward is going to be in there. So of these, which ones do you think? Remember to put a 2 in front of answer A, B, or C so we know exactly which poll question you are answering. We are at the halftime, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to thank, again, all of you out there, especially our members, for being members. But I definitely love the subscribers and for the support that you guys show on all the content that we put out there, man. Cannot thank you guys enough. Again, as far as what we do, the season schedule is going to be changing once we get into the season. But right now, we're live Monday, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern. Thursday morning, 10 Eastern, at 9 a.m. Central. So that's our schedule. We have our Friday podcast. So I appreciate everybody. Remember, you can always like, follow, subscribe. Remember to definitely subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel, super chats are one way to do it. Also, becoming a member. Memberships are going to change. So just want you guys to know, again, we're going to have our memberships that are going to change for the better. I believe YouTube has said once we do change the memberships, they kick you out and you have to go back in. We're double checking all of that, but the changes are going to be to your all's benefit. So we'll let you know in advance when that happens. But until then, if you haven't already become a member, make sure you click to sign up. We have 5 separate levels. You always get that live chat recognition once you become a member. So we appreciate all of that. Let's get back to it, people. So Calvin Austin III is kind of the forgotten guy. Can he be the guy to step up to be wide receiver 2? Well, first off, he's 5'8", 165. Okay. And that 165 might be a little generous. So he's not your prototypical wide receiver 2. Now, I will say this as far as he is concerned. He can play X. Well, not really X. He plays more Z, which is a flanker, and he can play the Y. So he can play outside, but it's still off the ball as the flanker position. So he can do both. Is he better as a Y in the slot? Probably. But he can play the flanker position if you need him to do that. But is that what you want? I guess that's my question. Is that what you want? Or do you want to put him in the best position where he can help the team and help himself? And for me, that's the slot. Now, the one thing that we didn't see, well, let's go over a little bit as far as his situation. He got drafted 2022, got hurt in training camp and sat out all year. They thought he would come back in October. He didn't. They weren't comfortable with him coming back. They didn't want to rush his progression, so he sat out all of the 2022 season. Excuse me. So with an injured foot. So then the second year, 2023, doesn't have a ton of opportunities. 30 targets, 17 receptions, like 180 yards, a touchdown. And he had some punt returns. He was the main punt returner. So, and that's kind of what his job was his second year. And everybody said, okay, if he can't take a step forward in his third year, we're going to have to move on. Well, he did. We went into the situation kind of like we're going into it last year, where we had a number 1 and we had no idea who the second actual wide receiver was going to be. Now, I think people are feeling a little bit better about the situation this year because they've seen what Calvin Austin can do. Now, am I in no way comparing him to like a T. Higgins being a second wide receiver? I'm not doing that. But people feel a little bit more comfortable than last year. It's not that we don't want another receiver, okay? I don't want to confuse and say we don't want another receiver, but people feel a little bit more comfortable because they're like, Calvin Austin's not ideal, but he was okay, and he was. He had 38 catches. That was 4th on the team. 548 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. He made some big catches and big games, and he made tough catches. That was the thing that not surprised me, but encouraged me the most. Catches over the middle where he took big shots. Catches down the sideline. He made tough, contested catches last season, which for me, yeah. Now, would I like to see more shallow crosses to him? Yes. Would I like to see deep over routes from him? Yes. Some of that's dependent on the offensive line holding up when you're talking deep over routes. But do I want to see some slot fades, some slot corners, some slot posts, more of than what we saw? Yes. So get him the ball in space, little quick slants. Yes. I want to see all of that, ladies and gentlemen. And I think the Steelers just have to do a better job of getting him the ball in space and creating opportunities for him. So that will be part of Arthur Smith's job. Hey, we got this guy. He can do some stuff. His catch radius is pretty crazy for a guy that's only 5'8". Usually guys that are 5'8", a lot of times those guys are are body catchers. You have to throw it directly on them. Calvin Austin can adjust to poorly thrown balls. And God knows our quarterbacks haven't been the most accurate. And he can go make a catch and make a tough catch. That's why I like Calvin Austin the third, man. He's a gritty football player. Nothing's been given to him in the pros. He's had to go out there and proving it, and he's done it so far. Now, this is a pivotal season for him. Last year on his contract, there's really been no talk of the Pittsburgh Steelers extending him. So I don't know if they will. Don't know if they won't. We'll see what happens. But I think he can be a bigger part of the offense than what he was last year. But we're going to have to get creative. We're going to have to get more creative, which, again, that's not his fault. He's depending on people being creative. So Arthur Smith's got to get in the lab. They got to dial up some stuff. But I think Calvin Austin can be a better player. Again, I'm not saying he's your prototypical wide receiver number 2 or anything like that. All I'm saying is I think that if you give him more opportunities at what he does best, he could produce for you. So the Steelers have to be able to look for that. They got to be able to do that. Let's get to the poll question. All right. So poll question number 3. How many touchdowns does Calvin Austin III have to score this season in order to remain a relevant piece for the Steelers past 2025? That's a good question. A, 3 to 4, B, 5 to 6, or C, 7 or more. How many touchdown passes does it take or will it take for him to become relevant past this season? A, B, or C. Remember to put a 3 in front of whatever answer you have so we know exactly what poll question you are answering. All right. Let's move on to Omar Khan. Now, the jury might still be out on Omar because a lot of people like some of the things that he does and they don't like some of the things that he does. But for the most part, I think we would all have to agree Omar Khan's done a pretty good job. Now, here's the kicker. He took over in 2022, but it was after the draft, which to me was insane. I'll just put it plain out there. That was insane. You knew Kevin Colbert was retiring. Why would you then allow him to have one final draft? That didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, he's retiring after the draft. I'm like, what? Why? Why not just right now and we move on? But they let him have it. So the 2023 draft was actually his first draft as a general manager. Now, his first pick was Broderick. We all thought at the time it was an outstanding move. He moved up from 17 to 14, traded with the New England Patriots, drafted Broderick Jones. Well, Broderick's got to do his thing because Broderick, first year, finally gets into the game, plays right tackle, does a decent job. Not phenomenal, but a decent job. Last year, I think we all know, horrific. Terrible job. Now he's back in the position that he was drafted to play. Looks good, saying all the right things, appears to be doing all the right things. Like I mentioned, said he wanted to get slimmer. So if he needed to gain weight, it's easier to put on the weight than to come in heavy and take it off. Again, a sign of maturity, a sign that he's becoming a professional. It's all you can ask for these guys in the offseason. I love it. But that's a big pick for him. But you think about the 2023 draft, I mean, not basically, Omar Khan was given an A+ universally by everybody for this draft. You get Broderick Jones, JPJ, we'll talk about that later, Keeanu Benton, Darnell Washington, Nick Herbig, Corey Trice Jr., and Spencer Anderson. Of those guys, everybody has gotten major minutes, except for maybe Spencer Anderson. They put him out there for a couple of games last year when James Washington got hurt or when Isaac Seumalo was out early, and he couldn't really fit the bill. Corey Trice Jr. can't stay healthy. Didn't look good in that Bengals game last year when he was healthy. I blame a lot of that on scheme because they put Corey Trice, hey, just cover Jamar Chase one-on-one. Nobody does that. But yet they wanted this guy who's been hurt, his first 2 years in the league, 7th round pick. You go out there and cover Jamar Chase one-on-one. Wasn't the best game plan per se. But everybody in that draft has pretty much been getting big time minutes. And it'll be a big year to see those guys develop as far as how good a couple years later that draft is. Now, you move on to 2024. I'm sorry, people. This draft, to me, is better than the 2023 one because you look at Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson, Mason McCormick, Logan Lee, and Ryan Watts. Of those picks, you've got 5 potential starters in Fautanu, Frazier, Wilson, and McCormick. Now, I say Roman Wilson, potential starter. 4 of them we damn sure know are going to start. Though, barring injury, let's knock on wood, we know we got 4 starters out of that. Roman Wilson might be the 5th starter out of that draft. I'm sorry. In what world, if your top 5 draft picks, are starting in their second year? That's pretty good. And they're pretty good players. So if they play well, yeah, that's a pretty good draft. Now, Logan Lee was part of that draft. We'll see if he makes the roster this year. He had a calf injury and, practice squatted up most last year. And then my man, Ryan Watts, man, I feel so bad he had to retire, injury retirement. I was so high on him last year, and he was going to make the team. He was going to be a piece and got hurt in that last preseason game. It was that bad he had to retire. So, but that draft, it looks pretty good right now. So you look at those 2 drafts from 2023 and 2024. Omar Khan, that looks pretty good, people. And you take those guys, you count Broderick Jones, JPJ, Keeanu Benton. Those are 3 starters in that draft. Now, Darnell Washington, he's not the starter. Herbig or Trice or Anderson, those guys are not the starter. You got 3. Then you throw 4 on top of that. So that's 7. And maybe Roman Wilson. That's 8. 8 guys in 2 drafts are starting after 2-3 years. And yeah, that's exactly what you're wanting, especially in a team that's technically rebuilding. And that's the thing that I like about it. But let's go to the 2025 draft before we dig too much into that. Derek Harmon traded for DK Metcalf, Caleb Johnson, Jack Sawyer, Y.A. Black, Will Howard, Jacob Bruner, and Dante Kent. So basically what they did is that Omar Khan decided how we're going to rebuild the Pittsburgh Steelers. Him and Andy Waddle, they've decided that they are going to rebuild the lines. 2023, offensive line. Wasn't enough. They went back in and said 2024, we're going to dig in even deeper on this offensive line. Okay, I can live with it. And they got 4 starters out of that. 4 starters in those last 2 drafts. So the Steelers are saying that's how you rebuild a football team. You got to go with your big people. They've done it. Now on defense, they went heavy on the defensive line this year. So when you're rebuilding your team, you've got to hit. Now, do all these things have to hit? If the O-line this year comes out and falls flat on its face, then you're going to be looking at Omar Khan like, hold on, brother, what's going on here? But I don't think that's going to be the case. I really don't. I think that they've figured some things out with those guys, which is good because you need to. And the D-line, again, you're building the team the right way from the inside out. The inside out. That's what the good teams do. The Eagles did that. The Chiefs did that. That's what you do. Now, those teams also had a quarterback. And again, it's easier to build from the inside out when you already have the quarterback. The Steelers don't have that. And that's been kind of the problem. People are looking at Will Howard to be the savior and talking about, all his intangibles and this and that. And I keep reminding people he was a 6th-round draft pick in a bad quarterback draft. Just keep that in mind before we make Will Howard out to be the hero of the Pittsburgh Steelers or the savior of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I like him. I think he can be a good backup. If he proves me wrong and he's an outstanding starter for the next decade, great. But I want to temper everybody's expectations with that is, again, he was a 6th-round draft pick in a bad quarterback draft. So hopefully he can outlive some of the he can play better than where he was drafted, and he can live up to a lot of people's expectations. I hope he does. I really do. I want him to be well. You know me. Anybody you play for the Steelers, I want you to play well. Period. End of story. But that's where Omar Khan is. Now, he's also done some wheeling and dealing. And the one thing, I always say this is that it's fine if you make a mistake, but don't live in the mistake. And he decided early on that Babyhands was not the guy. And he said, look, first off, I didn't draft him, so he ain't my draft pick. And second of all, he doesn't want to compete for a job. We brought in Russell Wilson. He's like, I got to get out of here. Like, okay. And that's coming off the heels of the reports of him not wanting to be the emergency quarterback one week, didn't want to be the backup quarterback one week. Yeah, we don't need that, you know? So Omar Khan's like, look, great. You don't want to be here. We will get you out of here. Let's get out. And it's not that Babyhands was blowing our socks off with his play anyway. So there's that. So he fleeced. I remember earlier I talked to you about JPJ. Just absolutely fleeced the Chicago Bears for the 36th pick for Chase Claypool. Now, I know that there's a lot of guys out there that, like Chase Claypool, said, hey, look at his rookie year and how good he was. Okay. I get all of that. Oh, the Steelers, they ruined him. Okay. Did the Bears ruin him too? Did the Dolphins? Did the Bills? It wasn't just the Steelers. I know that when we start talking bad about certain people or things, we want to always blame the Steelers, always blame Mike Tomlin. It's their fault, their system. Well, 3 other organizations couldn't use him either. Or better yet, 32 other organizations couldn't use him because he's playing Canadian Football League right now. And he's 26 and he isn't hurt. So think about that before we start bad mouthing the Steelers on what they did. This is a man that played in 4 organizations. He's no longer in the National Football League, and he's 26 years old, and he doesn't have some devastating knee injury or anything like that. Just not good enough. It's okay. Good job, Omar Khan. Excuse me. He also brought in DK Metcalf this year for a 2nd-round pick. A lot of people don't like the Steelers using draft capital to get players, but I mean, DK's 27. He's really, really good. I'm not saying he's a top 5 receiver, not even a top 10 receiver, but he's top 15 for sure. So for the Steelers to be able to get him for a 2nd-round pick, that's a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, are you going to draft the guy that's 27 or whatever? Are you going to just draft the guy that's going to be a top 15 receiver into the league right now? You aren't going to do that. So, yeah, with the 2nd-round pick, come on. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. To have good players on your team, sometimes you have to sacrifice some stuff. A 2nd-round pick for a top 15 receiver, that's worth it. That's worth it. So, to me, that was a great job. 4 years, $132 million. There's even an out after year 2 if things aren't working out. $60 million guaranteed. If it doesn't work out, the Steelers can get out. So we'll see. But I think it will work out. But I love the fact that he said, we got to get somebody in here, and they went and got him. Love that fact. So now the one thing that this is still a hot button that he did, he traded George Pickens. And a lot of people don't like the fact that he traded George Pickens. I am still have mixed emotions about it because I would have loved to see DK and George play. But it doesn't sound like the locker room was willing to do that. Now, there's some truth to, hey guys, you ain't got to like the guy, but he's ultra talented and he can help us win on Sundays. But it sounds like that was getting in the way. And then we saw the effort stuff with Pickens. We saw it, not just on blocking. It was on routes, right? I mean, what receiver runs half-ass routes? I never even heard of that before. I've heard him dogging it on run plays. Okay, no big deal. But dogging it on routes, on passing plays, never heard a receiver do that before. Never heard that. Either way, the bottom line is the locker room seems like the prominent people in the locker room didn't want him in there anymore, and he was no longer in there. Still controversial. Um, that might come back to bite us. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But he made the move for what he thought was best. So he's got to live with that. We'll see how that works out for the Steelers. So he's also gathered a ton of picks. So, we got 12 picks for next year. The draft is in Pittsburgh. So we can wheel and deal and slice and dice and do some of the things that we need to do. Maybe even use some of those picks to get a player. Hey, the Steelers are 8-2 at some point in the season, or 7-2. We need to go get a guy. Whatever the case may be. They've got options. They've got things that they can do. So I like where the Pittsburgh Steelers sit as an organization. I like where Omar Khan has put the Steelers as an organization. I like what he's done so far, ladies and gentlemen. I do. I'm a believer. People call him the con man. Yeah, okay. Okay. I like it. Now, again, these things have to play out. We talked about the offensive line. It's got to hit. The D line, it's got to hit. He's got to find a second wide receiver, a true number 2, unless it's Roman Wilson. Who knows? But we got to figure those things out. There's still some ifs, but as it sits today, I like what Omar Khan's done. But do you like what Omar Khan has done? Let's get to the poll question and find out, people. So the poll. How would you rate Omar Khan's performance as the Steelers general manager so far? A, excellent. He's making all the right moves. B, good. There are some hits and misses. C, average. Still too early to judge. Or D, poor. I'm not impressed with his decisions. That one might be a little harsh. You got to be impressed with some of them, don't you? So that one might be a little difficult. But as far as that is concerned, that's where I am with the poll question. I like A, B, C, or D. I got my favorite. I'll let you guys decide. Remember to put a number 4 in front of the answer so we know exactly what poll question is popping up. So appreciate that. Now, look, people, pivotal year, pivotal time for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We still don't know who the damn quarterback's going to be for our team yet. And here it is, May 30th, and we don't know. We talked earlier about whose fault it is. A lot of Steeler fans, just fans in general, we like to place blame because we want to know if it doesn't work out, we want to know who to be mad at. That goes for anything basically in life, not just our favorite football team here. But there's got to be some accountability. If we as fans are going to spend our hard-earned dollars, we need to know what the hell's going on and who has to be held accountable for it. And quite frankly, I think it's ridiculous that the Pittsburgh Steelers don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be at this point. Maybe they do know, and they're just not telling us. And that could be the case. A lot of people, a lot of you guys have said that all along, that they know who the quarterback is. They just aren't telling us. And that's fine. That's fine. But at some point, don't they deserve to know? Don't we deserve, again, it's our hard-earned dollars that are out there that we spend to support the team, So don't we deserve something? I'm not saying we have to be in the inner workings, but May 30th and we don't know the starter? I don't know. That's just me. I might be being selfish. I probably am. But the way that I look at it, I just think the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's just a pivotal time right now. It's just a really pivotal time. So hopefully they can get it all figured out here in the next few days. We got OTAs, the second of 3 OTAs coming up next week. By all intents and purposes, it was a good week this week. DK didn't show up to OTAs. I want to see DK at the next one. I want to see him at the next one. There's no reason for him not to be. I want to see him at the next one. Haven't played in this organization with these teammates, this offense. Time to get in there and get some practice time. I know it's not mandatory, but I want to see him in there. If 36-year-old Cam Hayward can show up, 34-year-old Darius Slay, they can show up, you can show up too. That's it. So appreciate all you guys, man. Thank you for everything that you do for this channel, man, and supporting it. That's all I got for you today. So other than that, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in the comments section like you guys always do, and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, and aloha.